can be in a happy marriage or relationship and enjoy your partner's company, all of those things. But there is balance. Like there's things that we both give and take on.
Right. Which I think that even goes back to what I said earlier with like, it's not going to be 50-50 relationship. Now coming together equally yoked.
Oh. So what's the difference? Well, what's the difference between the 50-50 part and being equally yoked? I'm just thinking for the person listening, they might be curious.
Well, I think a good example is actually how we came into our relationship, which was we both were independent. We both kind of had our own things going on. We had great morals, values, the way that we would treat people. We came from a servant leadership kind of mindset. But then when we came together, it was still like that. But there's going to be times where you may need a little bit more attention or I may need a little bit more attention. And so it's not going to always be 50-50 every single day. Yeah. That's absolutely not the case at all. And so, for example, right, even just as a woman, there are times where hormonally I may need a little bit more attention, or I may need a little bit more distance even, whatever, sometimes that kind of comes about too. But I think with the happy wife, happy life, what that implies is that the household is going to be joyful and peaceful if the wife is happy. And that is absolutely not the case. It's if you both are happy, if you both are in a place where, I don't know if contentment's the right word, but you're both in a place where I know that if I need something, you have my back and vice versa. And I'm going to be giving just as much as you are giving. And when we need to do that may vary, but we know, and then you start to get on kind of a little bit of a cadence of like, okay, I know your body language. I know, like I tell you sometimes with your eyebrows, I'm like, what's going on with your eyebrows? Are you mad?
The brows can be a
dead
giveaway.
The brows always say something.
Dead giveaway.
Yes. So I think that it also implies that the husband's happiness either doesn't matter or is not something that maybe as a wife I want to hear, which that can build resentment from men, I would think, because it feels like I'm saying something and I'm expressing either my unhappiness or how I'm feeling about a situation, and you're shutting me down because you think that my happiness doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I think to that point, there can be certain things that you're like, I'm really gonna stand on that. Like I really need you to be able to make sure that like that's a concession or that's something that you kind of give and take on. And I feel like that's something that's so communication focused, where if you're communicating, and I feel like for us, the communication has evolved so much, and that's been such a huge blessing. Like
so much.
When I tell y'all it's evolved,
so much.
Like. Go ahead.
Well, let me just quickly give some context. So when we said that we met in the club, it was New Year's Eve. So I think I just turned 22 and you might've been 23 because my birthday's in October. So it's later in the year. And, so I was, having fun. I'm out with the girls. It's New Year's Eve. We're having a great time. And so we were young when we first met in that sense. And we had good communication because we did play team sports. We were also leaders in our employments as well, so we were able to communicate in that sense. But communicating with your partner about whether it's serious conversations or conversations that you don't want to have and you kind of avoid, that's very different than, just being somebody who's, we're natural leaders. And so we can communicate in those ways. But when you do have to communicate your emotions, your feelings, that is something that's very different. And you have to know how the other person also is going to receive the message. Just because I'm saying the message, sometimes if it comes from a certain messenger, you may not receive it. And so we started off by literally going into two separate rooms.
Different corners.
You
go to your side.
Two separate rooms, because one thing I told you from the beginning, I'm not going back and forth with you. Like I'm not. If you've got something to say, you can get it off your chest. I'm gonna sit over here and I'm gonna be quiet. And I know sometimes that kind of like riled you up a little bit, like got you even more hype. But I'm not gonna go back and forth with you because clearly we're not in the mind space or even the emotional space to be able to have this conversation. Yeah. So let's go into our separate corners. And it started off with just text messages, like just text me. And they used to be long paragraphs, like I've got something to say.
Let me tell you how
I really feel.
Yes.
So that's how that was one of our first that I remember, or how we had to kind of start really shifting our communication, because at that time we were also living together too. So that was something that you're adding in, that when you are living with somebody else, you're taking on also kind of how they live just on a day to day, whether it's like, do you have socks on the ground? Do you have like, do you leave your plates everywhere? Like those are the small things, but then you start thinking big things like, oh shoot, we own a home. Like we have a mortgage. Are we going to, do the backyard? And, you have bigger conversations that require you to have a different form of communication.
100%.